Hello once again and welcome back to Top 10 Videos. It's been a while since we did one of these, but I feel like it's time to return to the series and try and do a few more. The last one we did was Far Cry 3, Top 10 Far Cry 3 mods, and that did pretty well, so I thought we'd return to the series and do one on the Top 10 Cartoon Network shows. Not really any reason for doing this, apart from boredom and nostalgia, but hey ho, there you go. Most of the series in the list are from 1996 to 2004, because that's when I grew up watching Cartoon Network. The kind of more recent shows like Adventure Time aren't on the list for the simple reason I haven't seen them, so it'd be pretty hard to kind of review them and put them on this list, you know what I mean? I could kind of go on what other people say, but, you know, I don't know, I'm not other people, so this is kind of my top 10, not the top 10, that's just a disclaimer. If you disagree with the list, by all means, put down what you kind of think should be on the list below, but bear in mind it's my list, so it's kind of a reflection of my tastes. With that in mind, start off with Johnny Bravo. Johnny Bravo is a show that was pretty early on in Cartoon Network's life. It was a weird show about this kind of Elvis-esque character trying to get laid, and that was the whole premise. The episodes were kind of self-contained, there wasn't any kind of story arc throughout that I kind of noticed, but it was good all the same. It was just him trying to woo ladies. It didn't work. He wasn't a womanizer, but he thought he was. He had this kind of Elvis thing going on, as I said, so you'd think he would be, and it was just him failing at his relationships, and that was a running joke. So there was one in a hospital where you try and get with this woman in the hospital and she kept throwing him out the window and so on and so forth. It's a pretty basic concept, pretty kind of tried and tested throughout the whole series life, but it seems pretty popular. There's not a lot to say about it because it is so basic, but it does deserve a list. It is good, self-contained, kind of easily watchable type thing, but it's by no means the best. It's on the list, it deserves mention on the list, but it doesn't deserve the top spot. Dexter's Laboratory is one that's also pretty well known and pretty kind of well received. It's about Dexter, the boy genius, and his sister Dee Dee and their kind of adventures as he tries to kind of build weird contraptions and further the world in terms of science. The art style is really good, and even though it's really old, I think it was out in the 90s, it's still watchable today. I remember there was one episode about Chupacabra, and you'd have to go into the jungle and you'd find the Chupacabra and try and kill it, and it was really weird, as a lot of these are. Weird's going to be the overarching kind of word of the day, but yeah, it was really cool, really kind of unique for its time, and is well known throughout the world because it is so good and because it is so beloved by kind of a whole generation who watched it as a kid. Powerpuff Girls is something that's going to be quite controversial. I think it followed the adventures of these three genetically modified girls as they try to fight crime. Well, I say crime, but they're trying to fight off an evil monkey with a brain in a jar and a gay devil. Yeah, gay devil. Because that's what Cartoon Network liked. That's just how they rolled. They had like gay devils, weird monkeys, chocolate milk drinking imaginary friends, and that's why I love them. That's why they're better than Boomerang. Yeah, I went there. They're better than Boomerang. Codename Kids Next Door is another show that deserves mention. It's like an MI5 type thing, but with kind of a kid slant on it. So you'd have number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 were the names. You had like an Australian guy, you had like a bald kid. I don't know why he was bald, but we're not going to look into it. He was a bald kid. And they would fight like dentists and the delightful kids next door, and it was really cool. It was like, I don't know, James Bond or Austin Powers, and made fun of that in a lot of ways. It was pretty popular. I think a lot of people did enjoy it as a kid, and again, it was brought out kind of early 2000s, 2002, 2006, that sort of era, early 2000s. It had a few films as well. I don't remember what they were about. I think they were like alternate timelines or something like that, but they were pretty cool. And the stories, again, were pretty self-contained, as a lot of cartoons are. I think that's kind of the general sense, is that there's not an overarching story. They're all kind of things you can watch. You can watch episode 1 and then episode 70 and you won't be lost. There's no kind of thing that carries over. Each episode's like a fresh start almost. Unless it's like special circumstances, but like characters who are introduced will return, but not, I mean, like, for the most part, each episode is kind of separate to each other. But Codename Kids Next Door was pretty kind of awesome, pretty cool. and something that was kind of different from a lot of the things. A lot of the shows were weird for the sake of being weird, but Codename Kids Next Door wasn't really weird. It was more serious than a lot of the things on the list. It was more kind of action-based. Some of the things were weird for the sense of being weird, but this was action-based and had a kind of more serious slant to it, even if they did have mustard guns. Another one that deserves mention is Samurai Jack. Samurai Jack is one of the more serious ones, but it's one that has a good art style and is good from an aesthetic point of view. It tells the story of Jack, who has to fight loads of demons using samurai. Surprise, surprise, hint in the name. But yeah, it just had a weird art style. There was like diagonal shots, there was like weird Japanese anime type things going on, and it was just a cool show. I didn't watch it that much, so it's probably going to be a short kind of segment, but it does deserve mention. It does have a good style, and it does have a pretty good story. It's pretty popular around the world. I'm pretty sure it's won some awards, so it's more that other people like it, so I feel like we should include it on the list. But I did watch it as well, so there's that aspect as well. It had a few games, which was always cool. So did Billy and Mandy, so did a lot of other things. But I always remember Samurai Jack as being something that was really kind of standout, and you don't really see a lot of samurai shows for kids, you know what I mean? A lot of them were kind of Western, but this was one of the ones that was more, you know, Chinese, Japanese orientated, and had that kind of slant on it. It made it unique, similar to the Codename Kids Next Door thing, where like they had this aspect that made it stand out from the rest. I remember one episode there was a disco. I don't know why that's so important, but I remember there was a disco episode or something. So it couldn't have been that serious, but I mean, maybe that was a dream. I don't know. If you remember the disco episode of Samurai Jack, let me know, because I'm kind of confused as to whether that was a fever dream or something. I'm pretty sure it was a thing though. Samurai Jack and the disco. Never mind. Another one is Foster's Home for Imaginary Kids. This is one that I watched a lot as a kid, and it's one that's really cool as well. It's about a kind of foster home for imaginary friends. Again, the hint's in the name. So like a kid would have an imaginary friend, but then he'd grow up, and the little kind of imaginary friend would go to the foster home and stay there instead. It was pretty cool. It had these kind of two main characters, Blue and Mac, and it was about their kind of adventures and what they went through the whole time. It had these kind of array of different kind of creatures, imaginary friends, and the kind of trials and tribulations that they had. Again, it was pretty self-contained episodes. Seems to be the case in everything, but the main focus was Blue and Mac's kind of friendship and how they grew up and you know, got through life. There was one episode where they opened a lemonade stand and they kind of charged people for lemonade. I don't really remember the specifics, but yeah, there you go, that's the sales pitch. There's an episode about lemonade. Go watch it. Another one that deserves mention is Courage the Cowardly Dog. This is a show that has a cult following and is renowned around the world. It's really creepy, really strange, but I think that's part of the charm. It got away with a lot of stuff that you wouldn't expect cartoons to get away with. Courage the Cowardly Dog, I'm sure he's fucking depressed, or he has schizophrenia, or some kind of disease in his head from all the stuff he went through, because there was demons. They were the only house for like 1,000,000 miles. They were just a house in hell. But yeah, it was creepy, it was weird, and it was wonderful at the same time. Another show that deserves mention is Ed, Edd and Eddy. Ed, Edd and Eddy is a show that was pretty early on. I think it was like in the 90s. The art style is pretty kind of old now, so if that's your kind of jam, if that's what you like shows for, was the art style, then it is pretty kind of, you know, older now, pretty kind of archaic, but it is still a good show for the story and for the jokes and all that good stuff. The basic story is that Ed, Edd and Eddy are trying to get jawbreakers from the shop, and that's the whole story, that's the whole premise, is them getting jawbreakers and their adventures as they do so. So like, you've got this weird guy with a retainer who talks to a plank of wood with a face on it. He talks to a plank of wood. What? How does that make sense? He talks to a plank of wood with a face on it. It's just weird. It's just weird. You have one of them's a fucking idiot. I think it's Ed. He's just an utter spacker. Idiot. Round and round. Walks into doors, walks into walls, he walks into everything. And yeah, it's just their adventures as they are living in the suburb and as they try to get the jawbreakers and trying, you know, like, just get through life. It's a bit dodgy. It's a bit dodgy. Some weird stuff. It's not as weird as some of the later ones, granted, but it is still a weird show. And the art style always creeped me out as a kid. I don't know why, but it's just, there's something about it that's a bit strange. You know what I mean? like there's conspiracy theories about how they're all dead. So that's that's just evident as to how weird it is. There's conspiracy theories about all those kids being dead. So yeah, beautiful stuff. Chowder is another show that deserves mention, and it's one that's pretty new compared to a lot of the other ones. Chowder is one that's probably going to be quite controversial. I put this on instead of Powerpuff Girls. I think most people would put Powerpuff Girls on the list, but I think Chowder is a better show, and in my opinion, it kind of suits me personally a bit more. It's similar to, again, it's similar to a lot of the shows on the list as well. It's similar to Chowder is one that's pretty new, but still deserves a mention. It's strange, as a lot of these cartoons are. It tells the story of this purple squirrel who wants to be a chef, and there's dragons going around the place, and there's a man who's a schnitzel, and I'm trying to explain this without sounding like I'm high. What else is there? Fart jokes. When he makes the food, he doesn't use like butter and scones, he uses like fucking zim-zams and crumpled crumpets and stuff like that. It's a bit weird. It's similar to Billy and Mandy. I'm not sure if it's made by the same people, but it has that similar kind of style to it, a similar kind of overarching thing where it's weird, it's kind of, I don't want to use edgy, but it's edgy, it's like kind of gets away with a lot more than you would expect a cartoon to get away with. And Cartoon Network is the same like that. And Cartoon Network is similar in that vein with a lot of their shows. They kind of cutting edge and they get away with a lot of stuff that you wouldn't expect them to normally get away with. People's faces get ripped off and you see the flesh. People die all the time and it's just a bit weird. It's a bit weird, it's a bit wacky. It's almost like Adult Swim before Adult Swim became kind of like a popular thing. Adult Swim is like kind of adult cartoons like Robot Chicken. And Cartoon Network is similar to Robot Chicken. It's similar to that kind of thing. Sort of cartoons, but they're not based for little kids, they're more based for like 12-year-olds, you know what I mean? So they have more kind of adult themes in them, they have more kind of touchy subjects, but they are still kind of watchable for young kids. I watched as a young kid, and you know, actually that's not a good example, I'm fucked, but you know, you could watch it as a young kid and still come out okay. But Chowder, it's something that's easily digestible, something that's weird, and done in the way of But Chowder is something that's easily digestible, something that's weird, wacky, and similar to Adventure Time. It was brought out before Adventure Time, so if anything, Adventure Time copied off Chowder, but you know, they're different beasts, different things. You can't really compare them that much. Billy and Mandy is the last one on the list. Billy and Mandy is absolutely fantastic. My favourite show from my childhood, and one of the best cartoon shows I've ever seen. It tells the story of the Grim Reaper, Billy, and Mandy. The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy. See how the name links in? See how that's like an overarching thing? It's pretty cool, isn't it? So Billy and Mandy challenged the Grim Reaper to a limbo match. Right? Stay with us. So Billy and Mandy, two kids, challenged the Grim Reaper to a limbo match. The terms were, if Billy and Mandy won the limbo match, then Grim would have to save them for life. And if he won, I think like he got to take the grandma or something. I don't remember the specifics of his terms, but their terms were that he worked for them for all eternity. Now, because he's a Jamaican guy, he thought he would win at the limbo match, but he didn't, they won, and he had to save them for eternity. So what he does is he kind of just hangs out of their house, and it's kind of their adventures that they have. Because he is the Grim Reaper, there's a lot of kind of weird things that happen. Billy, one of the protagonists, becomes a dad to a giant spider. And the giant spider tries to get Billy to love him, but Billy never loves him. It's a really tragic, kind of Shakespearean tale. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful. The spider never finds any love. Then he gets angry because his dad doesn't love him and he kills everybody. But then like the makeup, I don't know, it's a bit weird. It's a bit of a weird sub-story, but there you go. There's this washed up action hero who falls in love with this goddess with the apple of temptation, and they try and do stuff. There's like weird tooth aliens that come in and invade the world. What else is there? There's this character with a trunk who loves chocolate milk and frozen yogurt, which is always cool. He loves his frozen yogurt, he does, and that was the running joke. Just, I love frozen yogurt, and that was it. That was his whole character. That was his arc, that was his motivation. That was just everything about him was just frozen yogurt, and he was a recurring character throughout the thing. Even in the movies, there was one episode. Even in the movies, there was one scene where they were getting judged in hell by like the overlords because Grim hadn't done his work, and the frozen yogurt guy was a judge, and he just talked about frozen yogurt, and you're like, what are you doing? But there you go. That was it. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful experience for everybody involved, and he is the standout character. He needs an Emmy, he needs a Grammy, he needs a fucking xylophone. That's what he needs. He needs everything.